Okay, guys, so sorry for the delay getting this video out. Um, I ended up running into a ton of issues, kind of completing the final steps with putting everything together. So I just got pretty frustrated and essentially kind of figured it all out and got it all put together. But some of the major issues that I had was getting the seal here where the TGV housings meet the head, and then also where the intake manifold meets the TGV housings. Like I mentioned, I bought these TGV delete housings used, and after putting it all together and doing a boost leak test, I realized that they were actually warped. So I ended up sanding them down. I went from like a 200 grit to an 800 grip on my granite countertop and was able to make them perfectly flat, which I thought would correct the problem. It didn't. So then I sanded this guy down. And then I ensured that these two surfaces met up perfectly, basically between the manifold and the housing. And they did meet perfectly, but it still leaked, and it was always right here on this driver's side, just on the outer aspect of these, and just extremely frustrating. And then what I eventually did was took everything back apart and set basically the manifold with the TGV housings in place on the granite countertop, and that's where there was a decent gap on the outer aspect of both these TGV housings on both sides. So essentially, while they were flat to themselves, when I put the whole thing together, it didn't sit 100% flat. So I ended up basically sanding this entire thing all in one piece on the TGV housings on both sides. Going from the 200, actually I ended up going from like 100 grit down to 600 grit, and then basically just took an emery cloth to it, cleaned it really well, put it back together, and finally it's not leaking. So super happy, but it was just a nightmare getting that done. So, but everything else is put back together, as you can see. Did a boost leak test again. Everything's holding. I don't think that really there's any leak at all. Another issue that I ran into is that I ended up stripping out at least one of the bolts holding this power steering pump onto the block. I did this on my other car too. It's really easy to do because they're aluminum threads. So just be super careful. I was trying to be careful and still did it. So what I ended up doing was getting a longer bolt that was probably a 1/4 inch longer, and then essentially used a bunch of Loctite, and that threaded in a bit more, and essentially I feel like that held really well. So I feel like this guy's in there pretty well. And then you can see I was going to switch to a different air box, but or a different intake, and I'd actually purchased an intake that was 73 millimeters online, actually from a buddy of mine on Marketplace. But then I ended up measuring this Cobb SF intake, and it's pretty much the same. It's like 71 millimeters. I thought that it was only like 65, but I think that they actually have two versions of this. So anyway, I'm just going to stick with the same intake that I have, and that way I shouldn't have to scale the MAF sensor, and then essentially I can just kind of work on scaling the injectors. So that'll make life a little bit easier when I go to tune this guy. So that's kind of where I'm at. The entire engine compartment essentially is done. I do need a new plug for the bottom of the radiator, because I ended up breaking one of those little plastic plugs off, which was super easy to do. That's supposed to come into Subaru tomorrow. And then from there, essentially what we need to do is install the fuel pump. And then this guy should be ready to rock, ready for the first start once I can get the base tune or the base map ready to go and load it onto the car. So I'm going to make a video on how to install the Walboro fuel pump into the stock hanger, and hopefully that'll go pretty well. I did do it once before, but this is going to be the 525, so I haven't actually seen any videos or anything online of people doing this, so I'm hopeful that it'll fit. But that's probably going to be the next video. And then following that, hopefully it's going to move on to more tuning videos and first start, and yep, we'll go from there. So definitely got some progress done here. It just took a bit longer than expected, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me, and thanks for following along with this build.